During its original run, the National Heavyweight Championship was the primary title in the Georgia territory of the National Wrestling Alliance. The title did indeed gain some national prominence as it came into existence just as Atlanta TV station WTVS was extending their reach on cable, also extending the reach of that station's wrestling program, Georgia Championship Wrestling, later renamed World Championship Wrestling. We'll take a look at every wrestler who held the title during its original run through the 1980s. Like other videos of this kind on this channel, it will simply be a glorified list, and we won't go too in-depth on every champion, but we will slow down and take a look at some interesting points along the way. I will point out the National Heavyweight Championship does still exist, but we won't try to go over every modern champion. We'll go over that more toward the end of the video. The title was originally called the NWA National Heavyweight Championship, sometimes referred to as the NWA Georgia National Heavyweight Championship. Like with every wrestling championship, there are unsure moments of history and peculiarities in the lineage, and the National Heavyweight Championship actually begins with some peculiarities. Some sources list Austin Idol as the first National Heavyweight Champion, winning the title on January 12, 1980. Actually, Idol defeated Steve Travis to regain the NWA National Television Championship on January 12, 1980. That title had just been renamed after a history of being the Georgia Television Championship. The first National Heavyweight Champion was actually Jack Briscoe, but when that first title reign began is a little unclear. A match between Briscoe and Terry Gordy on November 14, 1980 was billed as a top contenders match to crown the new National Heavyweight Champion. However, later on, it would be said Briscoe won the title in a tournament held on October 9, 1980, defeating Terry Funk in the final round. The match against Gordy was then recognized as his first defense. I couldn't find any records of a tournament on October 9, 1980, and there is no clear location given for a tournament held on that day, though I did find one source that claimed it was in Macon, Georgia. Pro wrestling being pro wrestling, officially the history of the National Heavyweight Championship begins on October 9, 1980, with Jack Briscoe defeating Terry Funk in a tournament final somewhere, even though it's likely neither of them were in a tournament that day. Briscoe held the championship until December 12th when he dropped the title to the Mongolian Stomper in Atlanta. Stomper took the title in 1981, losing it after 107 days to Steve Olszanowski in Atlanta on March 29, 1981. There's a reason they called him Steve-O, folks. Steve-O had a nice 139-day title reign, losing the championship to the Masked Superstar in Columbus, Georgia on August 15th. Superstar, who we would come to know as Bill Eadie in later years, had a significant first title reign, as less than a month after winning the title, he defeated Tommy Rich in a title unification match, unifying the National Heavyweight Championship with the Georgia Heavyweight Championship on September 12th in Atlanta, and stoking the fires of a feud between the two. Just over 2 weeks later, on September 28th in Augusta, Georgia, Tommy Rich took the national title to end Superstar's reign of 44 days in a hair versus mask match in a steel cage. Of course, Masked Superstar would continue to wear the mask despite losing the match, and became the first wrestler to be a two-time National Heavyweight Champion. Superstar defeated Rich in a Texas death match to regain the title on November 25th in Atlanta. The Superstar versus Rich feud culminated in another steel cage match and another title change, with Tommy Rich regaining the national title on January 17, 1982, at the Omni in Atlanta. Rich held the title for another 57 days, losing it to Ron Bass on March 15, 1982 in Augusta. The relatively short program between Rich and Bass came to an end on April 19th, also in Augusta, when Rich regained the title for a third time. Tommy only held the belt for 13 days, losing it to Buzz Sawyer on May 2, 1982 in Atlanta as part of a long and violent feud between the two. The championship was quickly out of the picture in the feud as Sawyer dropped the belt to Paul Orndorff on June 20th in Atlanta. One of the signs of how much pro wrestling has changed over the years, getting a shot at the world title was a special moment for most wrestlers in 1982, and it was presented to fans as such. Orndorff relinquished the national championship after 40 days to relieve him of defending the title so he could prepare for a match against NWA World Champion Ric Flair. Oddly, though, the powers that be waited more than a month to arrange a tournament to crown a new champion in Atlanta. By that time, Orndorff had lost to Flair by disqualification and was actually in the tournament. Orndorff would make it to the tournament final on August 29th, but lost to the Super Destroyer, who checked in with his first and only national title run. Super Destroyer held the title for 35 days before Orndorff regained the belt on October 3rd in Atlanta. Orndorff only held the title for 2 weeks, losing it to the Masked Superstar on October 17th in Atlanta. 3 weeks later, Superstar dropped the belt back to Orndorff on November 7th, 1982, which leads us into another odd bit of history. Officially, Orndorff held the title for 133 days, which was the longest reign in the title's short history to that point. However, some sources say Orndorff dropped the belt to Killer Carl Cox in December, who then lost the title to Tommy Rich in February, before Rich lost it back to Orndorff in early March. I can't find any records of those other title changes and don't personally remember it, though that was more than 40 years ago. Both Tommy Rich and Paul Orndorff were babyfaces at the time, which was a rarity for a title change. I don't think there is anything to them, but I wanted to mention them in case there was some merit to these other title changes. Otherwise, Orndorff held the title until March 20th, 1983, when he dropped the belt to Killer Tim Brooks at the Omni. Brooks had what would be the shortest national title reign in history, lasting only a few minutes. In storyline, Brooks actually sold the National Heavyweight Championship to Larry Zbyszko for $25,000. Over the next 41 days, Zbyszko defended the title against Tommy Rich and Tito Santana, only to have the NWA step in and strip him of the title on April 30th, citing that the championship cannot be purchased. There was no reason given why it took 41 days to strip Zbyszko of the title, but his reign is recognized since he did defend the championship on 3 occasions. On June 5th, 1983, a 12-man tournament was held at the Omni in Atlanta to crown a new champion with a $25,000 prize. Larry Zbyszko ended up winning the tournament, defeating Mr. Wrestling 2 in the final to get the title back as well as the $25,000 he'd spent. Zbyszko and Wrestling 2 feuded over the belt through the summer. Mr. Wrestling 2 took the national title on June 3rd, 1983 to end Zbyszko's run at 28 days. Zbyszko got the title back just 20 days later, when Wrestling 2 dropped the belt back to him on July 23, 1983, in Huntington, West Virginia, in a no time limit, no disqualification match, with Tim Brooks and Mr. Wrestling 1 serving as special referees. That title change also marked the first time the title changed hands outside Georgia. Zbyszko held the belt another 64 days before dropping the title on September 25th in Atlanta to a young Brett Wayne, who fans would later know as Brett Sawyer. Wayne entered into a feud with Jake Roberts over the belt, but it would be Ted DiBiase who took the title on November 18th in Cleveland, Ohio. Long before his days as the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase was a vicious heel in Georgia in the early 1980s. As National Heavyweight Champion, he entered into a feud with Tommy Rich and defeated Rich in a loser leaves town match that set up one of the most memorable moments on World Championship Wrestling. Shortly after Rich was forced to leave Georgia, a masked man calling himself Mr. R came into the territory and immediately went after DiBiase. It was obviously Tommy Rich wearing the mask, but when DiBiase protested, he was told Georgia Championship Wrestling couldn't make assumptions, and there was no way of knowing for sure that Mr. R was Tommy Rich unless the mask was removed. DiBiase challenged Mr. R to a match on television on February 18, 1984, with the National Heavyweight Championship on the line, saying he would unmask Mr. R and expose him on World Championship Wrestling to make sure everyone saw it was Tommy Rich under the mask. When time for the match came, DiBiase attacked Mr. R as soon as he hit the ring, not even giving him the time to take off his tracksuit. Mr. R took control of the match for a while, but once DiBiase regained the upper hand, he went for the mask, finally managing to get the mask off right in front of TV cameras, but it wasn't Tommy Rich. It was Brad Armstrong, son of Bob Armstrong, who had recently been severely injured by DiBiase. Tommy Rich then appeared at ringside wearing the same tracksuit and waving at DiBiase. An enraged DiBiase was distracted, allowing Armstrong to roll him up and pin him. It was the first major singles title of the 21-year-old Armstrong's career, and a title run that would last 54 days before he dropped the title to the Spoiler in Wheeling, West Virginia on April 12, 1984. Spoiler and Armstrong feuded over the belt going into the summer, with Armstrong regaining the national title on April 29th in Marietta, Georgia, but losing it back to the Spoiler on July 1st in Atlanta. The Spoiler was the national heavyweight champion on July 14, 1984, a day that came to be known as Black Saturday. That was the day Georgia fans from across the country tuned in to watch their normal NWA wrestling with Gordon Solie, and instead were informed by Freddie Miller The World Wrestling Federation had taken over the time slot. This left fans confused and angry. It's likely they were more confused and angry when they saw the spoiler still being introduced as the National Heavyweight Champion, wrestling on WWF cards. While the spoiler still had the belt, the championship was still an NWA title. Eventually, the Georgia Territory was given another time slot early on Saturday morning where Ted DiBiase was recognized as the National Heavyweight Champion. Officially, DiBiase's reign began on July 14th, the same day as Black Saturday, with fans being told he defeated the spoiler in Macon, Georgia. That match was, of course, a phantom match, as the spoiler had immediately jumped ship to the WWF. DiBiase had a nice run of 89 days before he dropped the belt to Ron Garvin on October 11, 1984, at Night of Champions in Baltimore, Maryland. Garvin held the title 234 days, which turned out to be the longest of the original run of the title. Garvin was also still champion when Jim Crockett bought the World Championship Wrestling time slot from the WWF, essentially merging the Georgia and Mid-Atlantic territories of the NWA into one territory, and bringing back some normalcy to a lot of wrestling fans Saturday afternoons. Garvin dropped the national title to Black Bart on June 1, 1985 in Atlanta in a loser leaves town match, though Garvin was only gone about a month. Bart had a healthy run himself, holding the title 112 days until he lost it to Terry Taylor on September 22nd. Taylor had a 67-day run with the belt before dropping it to Buddy Landell at Starrcade in Greensboro, North Carolina. This was part of a big push Landell was getting, but things would sour quickly. Landell's activities outside the ring brought his push to an end. Dusty Rhodes officially became the National Heavyweight Champion on December 19, 1985 in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This was another phantom match, as the powers that be decided to completely cut ties with Landell. Rhodes took the title in the 1985, dropping the belt to Tully Blanchard on March 4th during a Mid-Atlantic TV taping in Spartanburg, South Carolina. Blanchard kept the belt through the summer, losing it after 77 days to Wahoo McDaniel on August 28th in Los Angeles. McDaniel would be the last wrestler to have an actual title run with the National Heavyweight Championship, only lasting 31 days. On September 28, 1986, McDaniel put the national title on the line in a unification match against United States champion Nikita Koloff in Atlanta. Koloff won the match and both titles. Officially, Koloff is recognized as having a one-day title reign as National Heavyweight Champion, after which the title was absorbed by the United States Heavyweight Championship and essentially ceased to exist. So, officially, 24 different men held the National Heavyweight Championship in a history of just under 6 years. The title provided a lot of great moments in a short period of time, but as I said at the beginning of the video, the history does not stop there. In 1997, 11 years after the national title was merged with the U.S. title, the NWA reactivated the National Heavyweight Championship. Of course, at this time, the NWA was a shell of its former self, essentially consisting of a collection of indie promotions around the United States. There have been long periods of time the title was vacant with no clear reason why it was vacant, a lot of unclear title changes and unclear dates and locations. It's just a lot to try and decipher for something that might not even be considered part of the same lineage, but I also didn't want to completely ignore it. So here are a few of the wrestlers that have held the title since 1997. The first champion after the title was reactivated was Big Slam, also known as Big Slam Vader. Stevie Richards also held the title for just over 2 months in 1998. Doug Gilbert, who appeared in the CWA and the USWA in the 80s and 90s, also held the title in 1998. On January 17, 2009, in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, Phil Shatter defeated Crusher Hansen to win the national title. That was the start of a 763-day title reign, the longest of any incarnation of the National Heavyweight Championship. Shatter finally lost the title to Chance Prophet on February 19, 2011, in Franklinville, New Jersey. Former NWA World Champion Jax Dane went on to become a two-time National Heavyweight Champion, winning the title first in 2015 and again in 2022. Colt Cabana is also a two-time champion. James Storm held the title for about 3 months in 2019, and future NWA World Champions Trevor Murdoch and EC3 in 2020 and 2023 respectively also won the belt. Silas Mason, who you may have seen playing Terry Gordy in the Iron Claw, held the national title for 141 days in 2023. The current champion as of the making of this video is Mims, also known as Matthew Mims, whose reign began on August 31st, 2024. That's the entire list of national heavyweight champions for the original title, plus a bonus of a few wrestlers who held the modern version. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you would like to check out more pro wrestling content, click the links on the end screen. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, not necessarily in that order. And I will see you next time.